Welcome back to 101 East. For many Filipinos, sea travel is the only affordable way to visit island homes, friends and family. But for some, that trip can be fatal. Leonora Lebajo tells us the cost of the Philippines' safety record at sea.
I am Leonora Labajo, 36 years old. My eldest is Hana Michel Labajo and the youngest, Nathaniel Labajo. On that Friday, my husband texted me that he was already on board the ship. He asked if there's a storm in Cebu, because on board the ship, they were experiencing strong winds and heavy rains. I texted back, but there's no reply. It was like I was going crazy. When Sunday came, someone informed me that the ship, the Princess of the Stars, had sunk. He's kind. There's nothing bad I could say about him. He values our family. He loves our children. He has a lot of plans for our family, especially for our children, for them to finish studying. They don't have any idea. They just keep on asking for their father if he's coming home for this Christmas. I tell them he hasn't been found yet. He's still missing. My heart aches every time I see a picture of my husband. Often, I can't give the children what they're asking for because there's not enough money. If only Sulpicio didn't sail, it wouldn't have come to this. I don't know what will happen to my children now.
This week, 101 East comes to you from Manila, where we are discussing the issue of the Philippines Maritime Safety Record. Now, Vice Admiral, in 2003, President Gloria Arroyo was quoted, after a deadly accident, was quoted as saying, "These mishaps annoy me." And then she went on to say, well, the Maritime Affairs and the Maritime Industry Authority should pull up their socks and they should do much better at avoiding these mishaps.
Yes.
Should the Maritime Affairs be solely to blame for all these accidents?
No, actually, Fauzia, let's put it this way. Other countries are moving towards a direction where sea safety becomes everybody's responsibility, putting a lot of guidelines and advisories, but lesser in terms of boarding and inspection. This is to send the signal that everybody becomes responsible, particularly the ship owner and the master.
It does seem that no one wants to take the blame for any of the accidents, but I just want to ask you, Philippines Maritime Safety Record, is it safe to say that it is a low priority for the Philippines government?
Not really, because we are a maritime country, and our beloved president put up this strong Republic Nautical Highway, and this is to make easy and more effective, more efficient the movement of goods and people in our sea lanes.
But this is the same president, President Gloria Arroyo,
yes,
who has not increased the funding for the Coast Guard,
I
for the Maritime Authority in the last 6 years. And let me just read to you your record here. 40% of Coast Guard vessels are not operational.
How many?
Search and rescue vessels are among those considered not ready for the sea. Communication between units is mainly by texting on cellular phones because the Coast Guard cannot afford more radios.
Okay.
And the PCG can only afford to retain 4,000 staff on their payroll when you actually need 25,000 people. Why aren't you getting more funding?
You just have to look around. If you see right on my back is a modern ship. And these ships were obtained and acquired during the time of our president. And there are, I think right now we have 80 new ships as compared to the older ships that we had before. So I think this is a very welcome development on the part of the Philippine Coast Guard.
I'm sorry, Fauci, I have to butt in. I mean, this is precisely the problem. If you ask government, they will say it's high priority and it's not our fault, it's a typhoons. Of course, we've had typhoons and nothing can change that fact. If you ask the private sector, we follow all the rules. So if you ask both government and private sector, it's probably the riding public's fault that they're dying in these sea mishaps.
Well, how much
The
is
reality is it's a shared responsibility.
Yes.
As far as the riding public is concerned, the law says that it's a public convenience. It's there to serve the public. And the reality, though, is that the public has become incidental in this issue. Who's to blame? It's government and private sector. Why? Number one, there's a failure to uphold the kind of responsibility that public carriers owe to the riding public. That is the due diligence of a very cautious father of a family. No? And secondly, there's a failure to enforce laws. You can't blame typhoons because typhoons have always been around. You can't blame the fact that they're islands. We've always been an archipelago. What you must do, though, is take care of the riding interests, the interests of the riding public, and the records show that we have the most dangerous safety record in Southeast Asia. We're not the only archipelago in the world. Why is it that Indonesia doesn't have as bad a record as the Philippines?
They're below the wheel.
I think it's really the part of the problem is a failure on the part of government and private sector to acknowledge that the fault lies with them and not with the riding public.
Christopher.
I think I have to agree in the sense that there should be shared accountability. It's a nightmare in case there's a problem. But accidents, 95% is caused by people. Now, it could be your crew, it could be your asset, but these assets are between our own internal audit, between the inspection of the Coast Guard, between the safety regulations set by government. If you follow that according to the books, you minimize the probability of having these problems.
Well, I want to take you up on your point that
Yes.
most of the accidents occur because of people, be
Yes.
it the captain, be it
Yes.
the crew. How much pressure are captains or the crew under to try and sail and to carry on with their route despite weather conditions, despite overloading, in order to meet profits? Are they under pressure to meet profits?
Profits, if you look at the shipping industry, I don't think some of us are making money. I can speak for my company. We're not making money because of the high cost of fuel. It's a public service. It's a long-term business that it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of nurturing, but much has have to be desired. Government and the private sector have to be in partnership in building the maritime industry. But,
Harry, how much do you think this non-action and this continual accidents, how much do you think is a biasness against the poor? After all, they're the ones who are the major passengers, aren't they? They're the main passengers of these ferries.
Well, from the point of view of a litigation on the basis of a breach of contract, it takes at an average 5 years for a case to proceed. Secondly, courts do not really award exemplary damages of the kind and amount that they award in the US or in common law jurisdictions. A life in the Philippines is $50,000. It's correct, though, that there is now a new rule which requires mandatory insurance coverage of $1,000 or of 200,000 pesos, or roughly around $4,000. But that was only very recently, and that's we don't know if in fact they will comply with that, because the problem is many of the passengers are not in the manifest to begin with. So when you're not in the manifest, you're not required to pay insurance for that. No? And coupled with the fact that even if you win, assuming you can afford the services of counsel and the exorbitant court filing fees that we have, it will take about 19 years. I'm talking about an actual case involving MV Pass, which was described as the most perilous, sea time disaster during peacetime. No? One person won $250,000, but it took him 19 long years to litigate. But the average ocean liner or sea passenger takes ships precisely because they're cheap, meaning they don't have the resources to begin with to hire counsel and to litigate. And that is why the courts are not able to use the law on damages as a tool to bankrupt irresponsible shipping companies.
I just want to round up the discussion here. There is a maritime bill that is being discussed in the Senate at the moment. Harry, do you think that this will be the way forward, that this will finally mean an end to maritime disasters in the Philippines?
Well, I don't think so. I'm of the belief that we have sufficient laws already. It's a matter of implementing them. For instance, in a 2004 law, it is already mandated that the Marina, the regulatory agency, should conduct the inspection of vessels before they engage or before they set forth on a voyage. The reality is Marina is not even able to conduct this investigation, and in fairness to the Coast Guard, it has been delegated to the Coast Guard because it is the Coast Guard that has this capability. Now, on the part of the Coast Guard, they're trying to cope, but the reality is they only have about 50 people who can conduct these inspections. They're not really of the type that are qualified to conduct these inspections. They should be, the rank of captains, but it's really petty officers boarding these vessels for purposes of inspection. Plus the fact that there's only about 50 or even 500 of them when you have about 5,000 seagoing vessels in the Philippines. No? So when you have the law already in place and the reality that the law is not able to be implemented in the manner contemplated by Congress, that leads you to the conclusion that no matter if, it doesn't really matter if Congress passes yet another law, if you're not able to prevent existing laws, that will not address the problem.
Christopher, going forward, do you think that there is hope for the Philippines maritime safety record to improve?
I think it's a very big step that this law is being prepared, and as ship owners, we're taking a active role in formulating this law. And we would like to support the initiative of government, that it's really about time there are some provisions that have to be amended to be applicable in the current times. The size of ships, the kind of operation that we have evolved and changed in the last 20 years. And it's about time that we modify this to make it more applicable.
Vice Admiral, last word to you. You head an underfunded and a department that lacks manpower, skilled manpower. What needs to be done to improve the Philippines maritime
firstly, to
safety
say unfunded,
record?
that's very relative as far as I'm concerned. With the modest budget that we have, I think we're still moving forward. The Maritime Bill was mentioned. Of course, we also have a pending Philippine Coast Guard bill. Our Coast Guard law is as old as maybe you're even younger than our Coast Guard law. Our Coast Guard law emanates from a 1967 law. And I think we need to update that because of the dynamism of our maritime environment. So all this put together, I think, can improve tremendously our maritime industry in the country.
We're going to have to leave it there, gentlemen. Thank you very much for being with us. That's all the time we have from the 101 East team in Manila. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next week.